treated as he would wish to be treated, as one would wish his children to be treated. We are confronted primarily with a moral issue. It is as old as the scriptures and is as clear as the American Constitution. The heart of the question is whether all Americans are to be afforded equal rights and equal opportunities.
The right to abortion doesn't exist.
Battle over how race is taught.
Florida's controversial legislation passing.
I feel a breeze on my skin. And it's hard like watching the tears of a black man. He can't no wait. What if he can? Stand against the lands that forgot the stories of his generation and keep erasing the identity of a black man. I feel the sun on my skin as it bronzes my melanin like the burns of my kings, taken from their kingdoms to scorching cotton fields. I click my heels, but still, there's no place like home, yet we roam like savages in uncharted concrete jungles while the rumble in our voices say that we are lies when we say Black Lives Matter, but study killing our own. Is it wrong to kill the cattle before you eat, yet they're feeding on our souls and all we can do is put our hands in the air as if they care about our theatrics? Black man, put your hands down and stop standing in the surrendering position. Our ancestors didn't give up on us, so how dare you give up on our children? I feel the rain cleanse my tears of over 400 years of mourning, but somehow my people are stuck in the dark, afraid to come to the light, so they linger in the pain. But at some point, we have to bury the slain and realize they bled for us to reign. Kings and queens the same. I feel shaking in the earth, as if the dead are turning in their graves. Disgraced by the knowledge we possess, but too afraid to walk in. So tombstones crack like hearts break in the footsteps of the slaughter, and it gets harder as we walk into the deep. Third eye on fleek, we creep as if we are the ones that's wrong when we are the revolution. You have the solution. Stop putting yourself in nooses and hanging on to the lies and civilization that this is no place for a black man based on murders and wives. Why is it so hard to see the forest for the trees, yet you buckle your knees and bow to the lies and civilization and in all the praises they sing? They say that this is no place for a black man. But black man, it'll work for you. I have the blueprint. Protect us and we'll provide safe haven for you. Respect us and we will bear fruit for you. Honor us and we will die for you. See, I need my black man to understand that no matter where he stands is the right place for the success of a black man. Kayenne Nebula.
All right. Good afternoon. All right, let's bring some more energy. Good afternoon. Good. My name is Imara Kennedy. I am the National Director for Community Engagement and Communications for AIDS Healthcare Foundation, who is the sponsor of the We the People Coalition and our Black Leadership AIDS Crisis Coalition, who are so pleased to be back here at Good Hope and collaborating again with my dear friend, Pastor Cofield, as well as our dear friends at WNYC for what's going to be an amazing conversation. And it's just good to be here in Houston, in Texas, what some would say is the epicenter of Juneteenth as we have this important dialogue. And so just behalf of our organization, Pastor, I want to say thank you as always for just your partnership, your collaboration, your vision, and who you are here in this community. And always recognizing when it's time to have those important conversations and opening up the doors of the church, literally and figuratively, to bring community together. And so we just appreciate that, and we appreciate the Good Hope family and so many here in Houston. And as we launch this across the country, we just remind folks that, really today or actually on Wednesday, the 19th, the official day of Juneteenth, does celebrate the freedom of our people, that there is still work to be done in our community to ensure that all people have equal access to quality health care, have equal access to affordable housing, have equal access to all of the rights and privileges that we deserve to have as human beings. So, Pastor, thank you again, and I am so pleased to really bring you to your pulpit, Pastor D.Z. Cofield.
Well, let me just say, Amara, thank you so much for giving us an opportunity to partner with you again. Every time we get together, it's always something meaningful, always something life-changing. And to our entire audience, thank you for being with us, whether you are here in the sanctuary or watching anywhere in the world or listening anywhere in the world. We want to just say welcome. And I'm grateful today, you know, when we talk about Juneteenth, I think what's interesting to me, and I know there's somebody thinking, and there may be some cynics who are saying, well, you know, the Emancipation Proclamation was given in 1863. Why are we celebrating Juneteenth? And it doesn't really matter when it was given as much as it matters when you became aware of it and when you were able to walk in it because of your awareness. And I think for everybody who is listening, you ought to look for those seminal aha moments. Those aha moments when your reality is realized. And so this conversation, I think, is a great conversation around Juneteenth and helping to explain to people what the history of Juneteenth is so that we don't repeat the need for that again. And when we talk about this church, you know, two of the highlights of this church in terms of its civil rights legacy and history was the passage of the Smith versus Allwright case in 1944. That Supreme Court ruling that was given. That case was argued by Thurgood Marshall, who was then chief of the Legal Defense Fund of the NAACP. And it gave African Americans the right to vote in primary elections. The Democratic Party at that time considered themselves a private entity. And so African Americans were not allowed to vote in the Democratic primary. Lonnie Smith was a doctor who was a trustee at the Good Hope Church, who was chosen as the plaintiff, in part because 90% of his business came out of the African American community, and the belief was the white community could not do anything to hurt him financially, which says to us, if you're willing to fight, you've got to count the costs before you get in the fight, right? And that case went all the way to the Supreme Court, and Dr. Lonnie Smith and the plaintiffs prevailed. And then, of course, the Honorable Barbara Jordan, who grew up in this church. The irony of that is she cut her teeth on the pews at the old sanctuary in the 4th Ward, which was Freedmanstown. It has now been gentrified and is classified as Midtown now. But I remember in 1972, at the Watergate hearings, my grandmother in the Bedford-Stuyvesant section of Brooklyn, New York, calling me in and having me sit down on the floor next to her as she sat in her favorite chair and said, watch this woman. Listen to this woman. Listen to how she speaks. Listen to her intelligence. And I was just like mesmerized by this woman in 1972. I'm 10 years old when I'm listening to this, never knowing that 22 years later, God would navigate the circumstances of my life, bringing me from New York to Houston, Texas, and allowing me to be her pastor. And we had such a great relationship. Her sister, her last remaining sister, is still an active member of our church. And she would say to me, Pastor, she said, every Sunday I talk to Rosemary, and she goes through the entire sermon for me. Now, this is before we were streaming, right? Before cell phones and all that stuff. And she would tell me that Rosemary, every Sunday night, would talk to her and give her a play-by-play of the sermon, walk through all the notes in the sermon. And then when she came into town, she was always such a blessing, always such a source of encouragement. I got a chance to interact with her multiple times. But she, in her writing of the CRA, you know, the Community Reinvestment Act, and so many other ways that she touched the world, helped change the world for the better. And so I'm grateful that we get a chance to celebrate the history of this church as we celebrate the history of Juneteenth.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you. Let's give Pastor Cofield that. You know, because what is so true that if our history is not recorded, meaning, you know, in the books of history as well as on a day-to-day, then it can really almost be as though it never happened. And so it is important, particularly in this day of AI and technology and all that, that there's the human voice, the true human voice, that reminds us of the importance of this history. And I think it is so synergistic that, Pastor, that here at this church, that you are the one reminding us, the church, with that the deep connection. I know that we'll hear more about that in the program today. But, you know, as we said, is that today is also a day of reminder of action. So if there are folks who have not had a chance in their journey, whether you just haven't had a chance to, you just turned of age, you just moved, we do have the opportunity for voter registration right outside. We also encourage you to continue to stay engaged. The We the People movement really birthed out of the need to ensure that we were having the right narrative around the American democracy vocalized, recognizing that when we look at the preamble of the U.S. Constitution, that when we talk about we the people, we're talking about all people, no matter how you show up, no matter your socioeconomic status, your gender identity, your racial and cultural identity. We the people really do want a united States of America. We the people really do want equity and access for all people. And so this movement is really about coalitions coming together to showcase and to remind us that we are only as strong as we are our brother's keeper, as we are our sister's keeper, and that truly there is beauty in the unity of our diversity. And so we have been going around the country doing town halls. It was launched last 4th of July weekend, where close to 4,500 individuals from across the country came together in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, to galvanize the voices of the people, to talk about democracy, and to ensure that the rights and freedoms of all people are able to be continued no matter what some of the challenges are. And so I love that we are here, because what I know from the Black experience, Pastor, is that the epicenter of all great movements, of really the spirit-filled movements, have come out of the Black church and the Black faith tradition. And we know that Good Hope has an incredible rich history. So I just say thank you again. I know that it's going to be an incredible conversation. And we know that you cannot be in the Black church and not have some music. So we are asking our good friends here at Good Hope just to, as we close out this portion of the program and get ready to move into this exciting conversation with Kai Wright, I'm going to ask Mark Taylor just to bring us on home, as they say, from down south. We say bring it on home.
That's right.
With a few selections, and then we'll go right into introducing Kai. So please, again, let's just give a round of applause for Pastor Cofield and the Good Hope family here.
It's okay to stand up and clap your hands. Let's bless the Lord in here, amen. Hallelujah. Hey, be glorified. Be glorified. Be glorified. Be glorified. Be glorified. Be glorified. Come on and sing it. Be glorified. Be glorified. faithful. Yes, Lord. Be glorified. Hey, be thou glorified. Hallelujah.
Amen. How many of you know that our God is an awesome God? And we give him praise, we give him glory today. If you know the song, please feel free to join us and sing this afternoon. The song says, my God is awesome. He can move mountains, keep me in the valley, hide me from the rain. My God is awesome. He heals me when I'm broken, strength where I've been weakened, and forever he will reign. My God is awesome. He can move mountains, keep me in the valley, hide me from the rain. My God is awesome. He heals me when I'm broken, strength where I've been weakened, forever he will reign. Oh, my God is awesome. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. Oh, my God is. My God is. God is an awesome God, and he reigns from heaven above with wisdom, power, and love. Yeah, my God is the Savior of the whole world, giver of salvation. By his stripes I am healed. My God is awesome. Today I am forgiven. His grace is why I'm living. So praise his holy name. Everybody say, my God. God is awesome. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. Yeah, my God is. Everybody say, he's mighty. He's mighty. Our God is mighty. He's awesome. He's the Lord strong and mighty. Everybody say, he's holy. He's holy. He's holy. Oh, yes, he is. He's awesome. And there's nobody like our God. Everybody say, he's great. He's great. He's great. Oh, yes, he is. He's awesome. And he's greatly to be praised, yeah. Everybody say, deliverer. 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 Oh, yes, he is. He's awesome. Our God is mighty to save, yes. Everybody say, provider, provider. Our God is our provider. He's awesome. And I have everything that I need, yeah. Somebody say, protector, protector, protector. Oh, yes, he is. He's awesome. And I'm safe in his arms. Yes, I am. Hey, my God is. He can move mountains, keep me in the valley, hide me from the rain. My God is awesome. He heals me when I'm broken, strength where I've been weakened. Praise his holy name. Praise his holy name. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all heard again, but let's give a round of applause for our amazing vocalists again. And also for our beautiful spoken word artists that just brought it home. Another round of applause, please. And now, they joke and say that at times age gets in the way sometimes. I am now in my mid-50s and will say it's not age, but the eyes are changing. So I'm going to use the glasses and my cheat sheet to make sure that I share everything that we want to share. I will say that I am beyond excited to introduce our special guest in this next segment of the show. I have followed this individual and the programs that he does and shares through the wonderful medium of radio. And what I like to say is that Kai Wright has a lot of accolades and officially is the host and managing editor for Notes from America with Kai Wright that you can hear Sunday nights, 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central, and then you can do the rest of the timetable math from there. But what I would like to say as someone who is also a former journalist is that I believe that Kai really is doing what I truly believe is the reason why journalism exists. And that is not only to tell the stories and the truths and the facts of the stories, but use the means of storytelling for impacting community, transforming community, and having us feel differently about our lives and the world that we live in as we go through this journey every Sunday night with Kai. And so I love the fact to have this opportunity to collaborate together as we continue this work that Kai is leading each and every day. We just get the joy and bounty and pleasure of hearing him on Sundays, to be the change agent that America needs, to be the servant leader that Dr. King talks about. And I really, really, really do believe, and if you are not familiar, you will see some of this presented this evening, that Notes from America really is a part of the infrastructure and the impetus for helping to build the beloved community that Dr. King talked about. And we are on that journey here today in Houston, Texas. So, Good Hope family, Houston family, please join me in welcoming Mr. Kai Wright.
Amara is much too gracious. So we're going to do something really fun here over the next 49 minutes. We're going to make a live radio show together. You're all going to be part of that. It's going to be awesome. Notes from America, as Amara said, we're a Sunday night live show. Typically, we would be taking questions from our callers around the country. Tonight, we're going to take questions from you. You have cards on your on your chairs. You should fill those out if you have a question about Barbara Jordan in particular, about really anything to do with America's journey to democracy that we will be able to put to our guests for the show. So if you fill those out and raise your hand, one of our producers, Suzanne here, will grab it from you and feed it to me so that we can put it into the radio show. All right, so as we make a radio show, that means you need to know a couple of things. One, we're going to do it literally as though it were live. We're going to have to turn it around and put it on the radio in 130 cities in the next couple of hours. So we've got to do it as though it's actually the radio show. And so a couple of times I'm going to stop and take a break, which is the opportunity for the radio stations to play their ads and say what they want to say to their audience, so that'll be a little weird for you, but it's okay, we'll reset and then start again. And each time I come back and I say, hey, we're here in Good Hope Missionary Baptist Church, we want people to know we are here in Good Hope Missionary Baptist Church. So do not be bashful about welcoming the whole of the United States into this sanctuary. Give a joyful noise at those beginnings, all right? So we know you know how to do that, so please help us warm this up. What else do I need to say? That one other piece of business here. So we are every Sunday night again. We're on live, but throughout the week We are still engaging with our listeners, engaging with our community, and we do that mostly through Instagram. So if you are an Instagram user, we want you to we don't want this to be your only interaction with us. So take out your phone right now and go to Instagram and follow us. It's Notes with Kai, K-A-I, that's my first name. And that way you can feed your questions forward. That's how we come up with a lot of our shows, is what people are saying to us on our Instagram account. So we want to be in community with you there as well. Okay, so we're going to get started. You'll hear some music, you'll hear some theme music, you'll hear the billboard with Pastor Cofield, which is the thing that plays at the beginning of the show on the radio stations around the country before the news starts. And then we'll get into it, okay? Hello, everybody. It's Kai Wright welcoming you to the annual Juneteenth celebration from Notes from America. And I have someone I'd really like you to meet who's going to tell us about where we're at for this year's show.
Hi, I'm Dr. D.Z. Cofield, Senior Pastor at the Good Hope Missionary Baptist Church, where I've served for the last 30 years, and I want to welcome you to our church for this Juneteenth celebration.
Thank you, Pastor Cofield. It is great to be here. So much history within the walls of this sanctuary, history tied to the influence of Black people on American democracy.
Landmark decisions have come out of this church, and a landmark person in the person of Barbara Jordan, the first Black woman elected to Congress from a southern state.
A remarkable woman, she also led the hearings for the impeachment of Richard Nixon. We're going to learn about Barbara Jordan and about the lineage of our democracy, dating back to Emancipation and through her fascinating legacy. Happy Juneteenth, everybody. It's all coming up on Notes from America in a special broadcast. Have you ever heard of Barbara Jordan?
Actually, I don't know who Barbara. I don't know either.
Has she seen the news or something?
No.
I've heard, but I can't recollect right now.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're out on the streets of Houston asking people, have you ever heard of Barbara Jordan?
Actually, I don't know who Barbara. I don't know either.
Has she seen the news or something?
No.
I've heard, but I can't recollect right now.
Yeah, I think so. Barbara Jordan? I'm mixing her up with another Barbara.
They got schools and stuff named after her.
I do know Barbara Jordan. She was elected to Congress.
Barbara Jordan, one of our first African-American women members of Congress. She represented the area that I grew up in, and I've seen so many film clips of her thunderous voice doing some important work on behalf of the people of not only the 18th District, but for the entire nation.
It's Notes from America. I'm Kai Wright, and welcome to our annual Juneteenth special. We are coming to you this year from Houston, Texas, where we are recording live at Good Hope Missionary Baptist Church. This 152-year-old congregation has seen a lot of history. From the moment of emancipation forward, it's been witness to how Black Americans have pushed the United States to make the words in our Constitution real. And throughout our national history, members of this congregation have been trailblazers on America's journey toward true democracy. We're going to learn about one of those members in particular, the late Congresswoman Barbara Jordan. Now, as you just heard at the open of the show, Barbara Jordan's name may not ring a bell for a lot of people today, particularly younger people, even here in Houston. But Barbara Jordan, who died in 1996, was a pivotal figure at a pivotal time in our national history. Among many other things, she was the first Black woman elected to represent a southern state in Congress. That was 1973. And I want to put this in context because you got to understand something. When the Civil War ended and the period known as Reconstruction began, Black people rushed into government briefly until Jim Crow took over. More Black people served in Congress in those years right after the war than in the whole next 100 years combined, until the Voting Rights Act reopened the doors. And Barbara Jordan was standing there ready. She was one of the people who created multiracial government following the Civil Rights Movement. She went on to play a crucial role in forcing Richard Nixon's resignation following the Watergate scandal. and became known as one of the greatest orators in the history of American politics with her passionate defense of the U.S. Constitution. But it all started for her right here at Good Hope Missionary Baptist Church in her hometown of Houston, Texas. So to begin, I'm joined by Barbara Jordan's biographer, Mary Ellen Curtin, and by Reverend Ronald Bell, who is the Senior Director of Membership at Good Hope and a lifelong member himself. Welcome, both of you, to Notes from America. Reverend Bell, let us start with you because you can help us meet the late Congresswoman. When you were in college, you had the opportunity to interview her for an assignment. And since we cannot interview her ourselves now, we're going to try to live vicariously through you for a moment. Set the scene for us. When did this happen? What year was this? And what was your occasion for interviewing the Congresswoman?
It was around 89, 90. And I was taking a political science class at school and college, and I was writing a paper on statehood for Washington, D.C., and I was a proponent, and I needed an opposing view. And I looked right to her sister here at church, who I knew well, that knew me from growing up, and I asked her to help me get an interview. And she was then a professor at the LBJ's Public School Affairs, and she made the connection for me, and Barbara Jordan gave me 20 minutes for an interview. And I was able to get all of the information. I had to have all my questions in order, but...
I know one of the things that stood out for you when you spoke was the way she spoke. Her actual style of speech. Tell me about that. What about the way she spoke struck you?
It always fascinated me. She had that oration that was just, you couldn't be doing other things and not listen. She just had that command. And I was interviewing her nervous because I was wanting to make sure I asked the right questions. I'm talking to a congresswoman. Now, all of that was going on. And as she answered the questions, she was classic Barbara Jordan, yes, and I believe this. I mean, all of that was in there. And just that experience. But really, what really touched me is she gave me 20 minutes of her time.
Yeah.
She didn't have to, but she did. And it made a difference for that A-grade paper. Amen.
You got an A, all right. Amen. Let's hear a bit of what you mean about the way she spoke. Here's a bit of Barbara Jordan in one of her historic moments. She was the first black woman to give a keynote address at the Democratic National Convention. This was 1976, as the party nominated Jimmy Carter for the presidency.
Ladies and gentlemen, in case you don't know it, may I now present our second keynote speaker, the Honorable Barbara Jordan, Democrat of Houston, Texas. It was 144 years ago that members of the Democratic Party first met in convention to select a presidential candidate. Since that time, Democrats have continued to convene once every 4 years and draft a party platform and nominate a presidential candidate. And our meeting this week is a continuation of that tradition. But there is something different about tonight. There is something special about tonight. What is different? What is special? I, Barbara Jordan, am a keynote speaker.
That was Barbara Jordan at the 1976 Democratic National Convention. I'm also joined, as I said, by Mary Ellen Curtin. Her upcoming biography is called She Changed the Nation, Barbara Jordan's Life and Legacy in Black Politics. It's due out in September. And Mary Ellen, talk to me about Barbara Jordan's manner of speech. It is so distinctive, we can hear there. Is that an oratory style she developed, or was that just who she was? Tell me about the way she talked.
Well, it's both of those things and more. You really have to root her in her black church, her black family, her black community, black literature. I mean, really, she's a product of all those things. Her mother and her father were both orators. Her mother was an orator as a young woman in this church, in the Good Hope Missionary Baptist Church before she got married. Her father was also a minister, and he had his own church for a while. And when she was very young, he had her recite to the congregation. And she recited, as she said, about 1,000 times, James Weldon Johnson's famous poem, The Creation. And you can't get, something more deeply embedded in the Black experience than that poem. And so she was used to talking to a Black audience and having that feel. And it was also her Aunt Mamie, who was a music teacher, who not only taught her how to sing, but taught her that when you're singing, you are really establishing a relationship with your audience. You're not just vocalizing. You're not just trying to hit the right note. You are communicating. You are creating a relationship. And I think that really carried over into her speaking voice. She's very aware of the impact that she wants to have on her audience. Her minister, Reverend Lucas, also he was an example to her all of her life of someone who could command an audience and teach, but also evoke a response. So I think all of those examples, including her debate coach, Thomas Friedman. So Friedman, she had so many important Black mentors and that taught her along the way, and she really is the culmination of all those experiences.
As I said, there are a number of people today, particularly younger people, for whom they may be listening to this and being like, oh, Barbara Jordan now, who is that? Introduce those folks to this person. What made you want to write a biography of Barbara Jordan?
Right. Well, first of all, I grew up in the 70s, and I remember her very well from that period. But when I got older and was in graduate school and studying all these great heroes studying Black history and studying all these great heroes of the Black freedom movement, and I just wondered, how does she fit into this? Because we all know that she was a great individual. She had these milestones that she hit, these barriers that she broke. But her connection with the Black freedom struggle was never quite, made clear, I think, in what was written about her, because she was so exceptional. Yeah. It was hard not to focus on her achievements, right? But her connections with the Black community and the Black struggle, that was a little trickier to kind of elucidate and figure out. And again, to do that, you really have to get into her history here in Houston. And so that's what I did.
Okay. Well, we will get into that in a moment. But Reverend Bell, getting back to your interview, before we have to go to a break, I know one thing that stuck out for you was her devotion to the Constitution. Tell me about that. What did she say that made you feel that way, and why did that stick with you?
Well, when I decided to write the paper, and I'm a proponent of statehood, I needed an opposing view, and because of her position on the Constitution, the government needed to have a seat of government, is what she pointed out to me. And just in asking my questions, one of her first answers, she went into the Barbara Jordan. She says, I'm a devotee of the Constitution. And I got stuck on the word devotee. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what that word means. Okay, how do I keep going? And it took me 3 days to figure out what that word meant. But she was really telling me she was devoted to the Constitution. And because of that, that's why she believes that the federal government should have a seat of government, a place. So that particular view helped me to just prepare the paper and show two sides to it. So very helpful. Yeah.
Well, just ahead, we're going to learn how she gained global recognition as a defender of the Constitution by leading the congressional hearings on Richard Nixon's impeachment. Reverend Bell, thanks for helping us get started. Mary Ellen Curtin is going to stick around as we learn more about Barbara Jordan. I'm Kai Wright. This is a special edition of Notes from America coming to you from Good Hope Missionary Baptist Church in Houston, Texas to celebrate Juneteenth. And here's a bit of Good Hope's choir you're going to hear right now. More just ahead. Stay with us. All right, so before we get going for the second segment, so right now they're playing their sponsorship ads on the radio. This is a great opportunity if you have a question to write it down so that our producer Suzanne can go through them and get them to me, and we can put them to Mary Ellen and our future guests.
A president is impeachable if he attempts to subvert the Constitution. If the impeachment provision in the Constitution of the United States will not reach the offenses charged here, then perhaps that 18th century Constitution should be abandoned to a 20th century paper shredder. Has the president committed offenses, and planned, and directed, and acquiesced in a course of conduct which the Constitution will not tolerate? That's the question. We know that. We know the question. We should now forthwith proceed to answer the question. It is reason and not passion which must guide our deliberations, guide our debate, and guide our decision.
Welcome back. I'm Kai Wright, and this is a special edition of Notes from America, coming to you from the historic Good Hope Missionary Baptist Church in Houston, Texas. We are here this week in partnership with Houston Public Media and with AHF's We the People Coalition to celebrate Juneteenth and to think about the ways Black America built our democracy. What you just heard is part of a speech that maybe, depending on your age, you never heard. But in 1973, this speech, broadcast on national television, set the country aflame. It's the late Congresswoman Barbara Jordan as she opens the House impeachment hearings of Richard Nixon. I'm joined by historian Mary Ellen Curtin. Her book, which is due out later this year, is called She Changed the Nation, Barbara Jordan's Life and Legacy in Black Politics. And Mary Ellen, let's get into this moment in history. Set the scene for that speech. What's going on in the country, and why is Barbara Jordan in the middle of it?
Okay, great questions. Okay, so in the summer of 1974, the House Judiciary Committee, which she was a member of, had been a meeting in isolation. They'd been almost sequestered. They'd been listening to John Doerr, who was laying out the case for why President Nixon should be impeached. And there were all kinds of conversations happening within that committee behind the scenes. And there was a group of folks who were undecided. And you also had defenders of President Nixon. One in particular, Charles Wiggins of California, who insisted that it would be wrong to vote for impeachment unless you absolutely believed and could prove that the president could be convicted of a crime. And this is something that Barbara Jordan took issue with and was constantly arguing with him about, because he could be very persuasive. And there was a group of people called the undecideds, Republicans and Democrats, who were uncertain about whether they should vote this way. And it was very important for the chair of the committee, Chairman Rodino, to have a bipartisan vote. So it wasn't just Democrats over Republicans. You really needed not just a majority, but people who would otherwise, want to defend the president, realize this was what they needed to do. And so her argument about, when she makes this speech, she is addressing them, these undecideds, as well as the nation. This is the first time the nation is really hearing the arguments for impeachment. The Congress knows them, the Judiciary Committee knows them, but the public doesn't, because they've been meeting in secret, in private. And now she's explaining to the public what is going on and why impeachment is necessary. So it's really important to look at what she says, how she says it, and why she puts it in this way. Yeah.
And I said it set the country aflame. Is that true? I mean, is that
yes,
a fair characterization?
It is true, because the clarity of which she laid out the grounds for impeachment by juxtaposing what the president said and did against the criterion for impeachment that had been laid out in these state conventions was so clear to people that afterwards, everyone wanted a copy of the speech. The journalist said that she's the best mind on the committee. I mean, there was a real excitement and buzz when she finished and came out. And she also gave the speech during prime time. So again, this is when there's 3 stations, all of which are on, is being televised. This is 9 p.m. This is when America is tuned in. And so, yes, absolutely, her speech made a difference, and the way she framed it in terms of the Constitution, I think, is very important.
So the content, let's be clear, was part of that. Did it have anything to do with who she was? I mean, she was a 36-year-old
Yes, she
black
was young
woman at the time.
Yes, it did. And one of the way she frames the speech is by talking about the Constitution and saying, my faith in the Constitution is complete, it's total. And, but whenever she was asked about that, saying, well, look, there's a lot of problems with America. How can you profess this faith? She'd say, well, you have to remember what I said at the beginning of this speech. And at the beginning of this speech, she echoes Frederick Douglass, of all people. Frederick Douglass's 4th of July speech, where he says, I am not included in your holiday. And she says, I was not included in the original Constitution, right? But now, through the process of judicial review, I am now included, all right? And this is what makes this document so important, so vital. And the reason she wants to highlight the significance of the Constitution is because ultimately her goal is to make the argument of the gravity of President Nixon's crimes. And if the Constitution is a sham, right, if it doesn't mean anything, then who cares, right, if he violated it? But what she wants to argue is that, yes, the Constitution matters. What President Nixon did is, merits impeachment, and these are grave things that he did. And the Constitution also is important because it's wrong. She says it's an error to say you have to think he's guilty to vote for impeachment. She says, no, the Constitution doesn't say that. It makes the House the accusers, but not the judges. And so you're not judging whether he's guilty or not. You're just making an assessment, a decision over whether there's a possibility there. This is a check on abuse of power. And this is something that's our duty to do. So these were important arguments to make so that the nation understands and that undecided members of the committee can understand as well.
Barbara Jordan grew up in this congregation here at Good Hope Missionary Baptist Church, and we have a question from somebody in the congregation who asks, as we're in her home church, can you speak to the role faith played in Representative Jordan's leadership?
Yes, I mean, I think that, certainly a lot of her speaking, she knows her Bible, to say the least. I think it helps her maintain optimism. One of the quotes, and faith, to risk belief, in American democracy, I think that comes from her faith. When she was governor for a day in 1972, before she goes to Washington, she gives a very moving speech at the Texas State House, where she says to everyone gathered, most of whom were from the 5th Ward, she says, I want you to stand behind me and help me move this nation. And she quotes the Bible, and she says, it doth not yet appear what we shall be, right? So the future is there in front of us. We have to have faith in the future. And I also think she relied a great deal on members of the congregation for political support, the women who worked for her, who went door to door, who did all of that hard campaigning, who she inspired. She really spoke in so many churches when she was campaigning for office. So I think it was very influential and very important to her personally and also as a candidate.
Well, and she grew up around the civil rights movement coming out of this church as well. There was, or this congregation as well, there was an important civil rights case here. I wonder if you can give us a quick synopsis of and why it's important. Smith v. Allwright.
Correct, yeah.
One of the plaintiffs was a member of this congregation.
That's right. And also, so before, and Reverend Cofield referred to this, I mean, so before you have the the civil rights movement here in Texas, you had a voting rights movement in the 1940s. And one of the leaders of that movement was the minister of this church, Reverend Albert A. Lucas. And he was a monumental figure. He was a crusader. And I have to really thank the librarian of this church, Sarah Scarborough, who was the person who talked to me about Reverend Lucas and really emphasized his significance. And Reverend Lucas was a crusader. He was chair of the NAACP of the state of Texas, not just Houston. And he really helped to mobilize the communities to raise money for the case. He went to the NAACP convention in Philadelphia to argue, make the case for why Houston should be the site of the next annual convention, which was in 1941. So we went to Philadelphia, made the case. People voted for Houston over Los Angeles, which is kind of interesting, and said, no, you should be here where things are happening. You need to see the soldiers on the ground. And so many, Thurgood Marshall was here, A. Philip Randolph was here, Richard Wright was here to accept the Spring Iron Medal, all in good hope. This little working class church in the poor Fourth Ward attracted all of these black luminaries from all over the nation. And it really helped to mobilize the significant, and voter education was an incredibly important part of that meeting. And so because of that, they were able to raise money. And Dr. Smith, you need to talk about him as a courageous individual, because he had to go and try and get a ballot and try to vote in that black primary because of in that white primary, white-only primary, because blacks who had been excluded from voting in the Democratic primary and excluded from joining the Democratic Party. But he went, he tried to cast a ballot, and he was turned away. That took a lot of courage. And because he did that, though, he could become, 1 year later, the plaintiff in Thurgood Marshall's case. And so he had the evidence for that. He had been harmed, and then eventually that case becomes Smith v. Allwright. And in 1944, when that case is decided, the joy, everybody came to Good Hope to celebrate. There was such a huge crowd. Dr. Smith had to be, he couldn't walk through the doors. He had to be pushed through the windows in the back. Wow. And Thurgood Marshall was here, and he witnesses the whole thing. Wow. So it's quite an event, and it's one of the most important Supreme Court decisions. It's on par with Brown in terms of what it does for opening up the political process for black Americans.
How do you think growing up in that kind of milieu shaped when you think about this person who was had a real understanding of the Constitution, who decided, again, as I said earlier in the show, to be one of the first people post-Voting Rights Act to say, you know what, government, I'm going to go into government. I'm going to. Right. How do you think that history impacted her ambitions?
Right. Well, you have to say she was elected before the Voting Rights Act, which makes it all the more amazing.
Her first election is in 1960.
Well, she runs in 62 and in 64, and she's defeated, and then finally she is elected in 66. But she is part of a movement, a coalition movement of liberal, they called themselves the Democratic They were part of a group of Democrats who wanted to upend and end conservative rule of the party in Texas. And so they are involved in nonviolent direct action, but they're also involved in litigation. And one of the things they did was bring lawsuits against the unfair way that the state houses and were districted. And so they brought lawsuits for redistricting, and that is how she was able to get a seat in the Senate. And so she always understood the power of the courts for making the black vote meaningful, because without redistricting, she said, I never would have been elected. And so she also understood the importance of the black vote in being a powerful leveraging force, that it could decide elections, it could decide primary elections. And we still see that, we'll get to this later, but we still see that today. So part of working with others in the Democratic Party, it was a coalition of labor and liberals and Latinos. They all had a goal, which was to make the Democratic Party fairer and more representative and to bring the ideals of the civil rights movement into governance. That was always her goal.
We walked around Houston and talked to people about Barbara Jordan, and many of the people, as I said, we approached the young people, weren't immediately aware of her, but once we told them, they had lots of questions as well, and I want to share some of those. So here's one question we got we got this question in a bunch of different ways.
With times being so different back then, and what was her experience with coming up and just knocking down different walls for women to be able to hold that type of position?
So if you didn't quite catch it, how hard was it for her to get in? How much did she have to face given the time that she was in, that she was running as a black woman? Right. What did she have to overcome in order to get there?
Well, black women were deeply involved in the civic life of Houston. You had Fifth Ward Civic Clubs, and you had Mrs. Hattie Mae White, who had been served on the school board in Texas. But to compete in a primary race and to beat a white male opponent, that was not easy. She made it look easy because in the end, she got an overwhelming number of votes. But in that primary race, there was some resentment among other liberals who thought, no, I have served, her opponent said, well, I have served in the Texas House, and now it's my turn to serve in the Senate. And she had to say, it's not your turn, right? I have worked for the Democratic Party. I have brought black voters into this coalition, and now I have a seat that I can win, and this is something that I should be endorsed. And it wasn't, she had to fight for that. Even though she was part of that coalition, she really had to fight and put herself out there and insist that she was the proper person to represent the Fifth Ward and black Houston in the Senate. So nothing was given, right? Everything has to be fought for. And I think for her especially, yes, to put herself out there and to insist that she was the right person, that took a lot of courage, a lot of guts, and determination and ambition.
This is a special Juneteenth edition of Notes from America. I'm Kai Wright, and I'm talking with American University scholar Mary Ellen Curtin, author of the upcoming book, She Changed the Nation, Barbara Jordan's Life and Legacy in Black Politics. We are here at Barbara Jordan's lifelong church home, the historic Good Hope Missionary Baptist Church in Houston, Texas. More just ahead.
We are a people in a quandary about the present. We are a people in search of our future. We are a people in search of a national community. We are a people trying not only to solve the problems of the present, unemployment, inflation, but we are attempting on a larger scale to fulfill the promise of America. We are attempting to fulfill our national purpose to create and sustain a society in which all of us are equal. A spirit of harmony will survive in America only if each of us remembers that we share a common destiny. If each of us remembers when self-interest and bitterness seem to prevail, that we share a common destiny.
All right, so we're on break again. They're playing their ads. We've been getting your questions. Thank you. It's spectacular. We're going to try to work a bunch of them into this next segment. as we get started. Welcome back. I'm Kai Wright, and this is a special Juneteenth edition of Notes from America, coming to you from the sanctuary of the historic Good Hope Missionary Baptist Church in Houston, Texas. We are talking about the late Congresswoman Barbara Jordan, who grew up in this congregation. She came from a very musical family, and that Louis Armstrong song that we just heard a little bit of, that was her favorite song. It's called St. James Infirmary. With us today is American University scholar Mary Ellen Curtin, who has written an anticipated biography of Barbara Jordan that's due out later this year. And as we turn to talk about things in the present day, I am also joined by Sonny Messiah Giles, who is the CEO and publisher of the Defender Media Group, which is Houston's Black community news organization. Welcome to Notes from America, Sonny.
Thanks for the invitation.
So you've been listening to us talk about Barbara Jordan. I just want to start with your general reaction to what you've heard, thinking about her legacy today.
Thinking about her legacy, I think that there are a few things that need to be shouted out. One of them is she's a Fifth Ward native, and so as a result, I knew that would create some rows. All in the house of Fifth Ward, right? Fifth Ward, Texas, baby, is what they call it, right?
All right.
Then there's Texas Southern and Dr. Thomas Freeman, who played a significant role in her articulation and clarity of her message. I think, yes, Good Hope and all of her youth helped shape her being a speaker, but I think that her skills were developed by Dr. Freeman. And so to give him a shout out is important. And there's so many people who followed in her footsteps, everybody from the Mickey Lelands and the Ruth Simmons, and the list goes on and on. So I needed to at least acknowledge that, because Barbara Jordan was a fighter. I think that's part of that Fifth Ward spirit. But I think that just the fact that she lost 2 races and then came back and won a Senate race, it was a male-dominated environment. And as a result, I think she was fighting on 2 fronts, not just black, but women also. And so with that, I think that is one of the Mary Ellen pieces, that she was fighting on multiple fronts. I think also, though, Kai, one of the areas that I think oftentimes is understated is the fact she never came out of the closet, but she never stepped back from who she was. She was always there and in her own self, proud of where she was and who she was. And I think because of that, the LGBTQ community was able to utilize her as one of their pillars of strength that showed that leadership in politics was something that their community could also do.
Mary Ellen, I think what Sonny's referring to is, of course, Barbara Jordan's lifelong or decades-long relationship with Nancy Earl, which was not something that she talked a lot about, but not something that she didn't talk about. What, in your research about her and that relationship, you think is relevant to today?
Well, I think that it's clear that Nancy Earl, played a huge role in just being a support. She traveled with her, worked in her office, helped her with so many things. It was a real booster. And also, so there's no question about the significance of that relationship. But, in the time, it's funny, like, no one really asked her. It's not like anyone ever said,
Well, behind closed doors, people were talking all the time.
Of course.
Let's be real.
But in terms of publicly, whether, like, this whole thing about, like, I agree, she was never, like, in the closet, in that they went places together. Nancy Earl accompanied her. And I think that Barbara Jordan very much valued her independence and valued her privacy. This is also true about her health issues as well. She valued her privacy, but at the same time, she never, I think you're right, she never really denied, that her relationship.
I think what trumped it all, for lack of a better word, was the fact that her community advocacy, her loyalty to fairness, and her belief in the Constitution, those elements, I think, didn't matter where you came from, what you did, who you were about. It was more of what was your mission, and her mission was clear.
Well, I'm glad we got to Texas Southern. Texas Southern is a historically black college and university here in Texas, or here in Houston. We had several questions from the audience about Texas Southern, but I think you've covered them, but I wanted to name that our folks here wanted to hear more about Texas Southern. As I mentioned, we walked around Houston asking people if they had questions about Barbara Jordan. And here's one more I want to play for both of you.
Texas being Texas, a majority Republican state, did that matter as much to her, Democrat versus Republican, or did it matter more to push the agenda of the black community? Because now the agenda of the black community seems to be more so handcuffed or allocated to the Democratic Party, but was it the same at that time?
So Mary Ellen, let's start with you. What were things like in Barbara Jordan's era when it comes to partisanship? Was the black community so tied to the Democratic Party then, and how did that change?
Right. Well, she's very partisan, and she's a very strong Democrat, and it's because she really, not because she wants to follow the Democratic Party, but because she wants to change it. She wants to transform it. She wants to make it into an instrument for social justice and for equality as best as she can. And so, she really wants people to have that belief, to risk that belief, and that you're not just blindly following something, but that you have an opportunity here in this two-party system, to participate in a party that there's an opportunity to make it work for your benefit and to remove the obstacles that had been there. And so this is a core belief, as she says in the 76 speech, of what the Democrats are all about. They're inclusive, they're diverse, they're committed to removing obstacles to progress, and she wants people to be enthusiastic about that project.
But it's interesting because we think just historically about when did the black community become so closely tied to the Democratic Party, and we think about that as the Roosevelt era, right? But
correct.
That's not correct.
Well, it is, depending on what region, because in the North, yes, but in the South, black voting was, again, dangerous, especially in the 1930s.
And Democrats were not that interested in seeing black folks vote.
Exactly. It's the party of white supremacy. It's the party of white rule. So this is why the energy and commitment that went into upending that, really is so important for understanding the civil rights movement. And what the black Democrats in Texas tried to do is change that party, and her speech in 76 really is about exercising those ghosts,
Sonny, let me ask you two things. One, the person's question about partisanship that we heard in her part of the question that was about now. Does it feel like in Texas and Houston that the black agenda is so closely tied to the Democratic Party? And what do we think about that? But another question from the audience I want to pair with that for you, the audience here, is given the blatant gerrymandering used to dilute voting power of communities of color, have we really progressed in the years since 1944 with Smith v. Allwright out of this community? So can I kind of put those two things together for you? Just thinking about partisanship in black politics in this area now, and then given gerrymandering, where is the power of the black community electorally now?
I think historically the black community has always had to fight, whether within the Democratic Party or outside of the Democratic Party. There's never been a fair share of equity. If you would talk to some of the Congress people today, you would find out from them that they are still having to fight internally for equitable shares of leadership and decision making. But I think during Barbara's term, it was much harder because Democrats, the white Democrats, were not that excited about giving black Democrats power. So let's not get it twisted. She was having to fight that battle also.
Yeah.
So it was three fronts. It was more of a trifecta that was going on. She was fighting the white Democrats, she was fighting males that were black, and she was fighting for women to be able to get an equitable share. So when you look at it from that perspective, Barbara was definitely a crusader and a warrior and a shero. When you transition that to today, okay, I do think that the reality is it doesn't matter which party you're going to be in, you still got to fight for equitable share. Neither one of them wants to give you jack. And I think that because of that, we as black people have to leverage our power to mean something, to count for something. We can't just give it away because it's there. But it's boiling down when you look at this race that's coming up. It's like, it's black and white almost. It's not, I mean, it's very clear as to who is in the interest of black people. Based on things like Project 2025, you know, it's like...
Project 2025 is the background research that has been...
The bodacious research that has been rolled out as the plan for those who support Trump.
From the Heritage Foundation about what they're going to do if Donald Trump should win. But let me ask you this. Certainly in Democratic Party circles, there is a great deal of anxiety about black people not voting in this election. Do you share that anxiety?
I share the anxiety only from the standpoint of you better get off your behind and vote. The reality is that, you know, I'm going to look at a few notes that I have here because I knew this question was going to probably come up. When you look at the fact that Project 2025, which is this plan of action that's supposed to go into effect if Trump is elected, one of the things says they're going to eliminate the Department of Education. Well, you think black kids are having problems in education today with federal regulation? Guess what it's going to be like without it? Two is that they're going to eliminate DEI programs. They've already succeeded on the Supreme Court with the elimination in universities, being able to recruit people of color to the universities as our whole United States becomes more of color. And then they're going to try to destroy contracts. When in Harris County, we just got through doing a number of disparity studies that say blacks are getting less than 5% of the contracts, and you want to take that also? And then look at you, Kai. They're talking about defunding public media, eliminating NPR and PBS.
Well, luckily we actually depend on the
Thank God
donations
for private
of our members.
sector. Yeah, for people giving private donations. But the reality is this plan is a plan that is really against public interest. And so as a result, people have to wake up. Here's the reality.
But do you think people know that? Do you think people feel that way?
I think that the Democratic Party has a messaging problem and that they have to work on their messaging. I think part of that has to do with, look at the facts, open your eyes. If women's rights are being taken right now regarding their health care, what could be taken from black people? A lot of things. Not that we've achieved a lot of parity and equity, but it's definitely better than it was back in Barbara Jordan's day.
Mary Ellen, Barbara Jordan was famously adept at moving voting blocks. Tell me about that. How did she come to that skill? And how did she use it, and how did she come to it?
You mean what made her so persuasive?
Yeah, at being her understanding that she needed a voting block and that she knew how to put it together.
Oh, well, I think it goes back to this coalition building that comes out of Houston, you know, that she understood. But at the same time, she made sure her campaign headquarters was in the 5th Ward. It was on Lyons Avenue. So she understood that you're only as strong, you know, you have to be strong within the coalition in order to be taken seriously. So she really tried to do both things. She wanted to mobilize black voters, and she wanted to make alliances with like-minded folks. This goes back to Bayard Rustin, you know, talking about how, you know, we really have to think about how to, and the Democrats are still trying to do this. They're trying to not meld these interests, but balance them and make people work together. It's not easy, right? It's never been easy, but it's the only option that we have now. And to get the vote out, to mobilize people, to go door to door, all that heavy work, that's a heavy lift, and people have to get out and do it. And so she would be, that would be her message.
I think Barbara understood that the whole is only as strong as the parts. And she was very strategic in how she put those parts together, whether that was the black church or whether it was labor or whether it was the community in general, the educators. She had a way of targeting different groups, and that coalition of those groups is what helped her ride to victory.
Mary Ellen, we talked at length about impeachment of Richard Nixon. The obvious elephant in this conversation is Donald Trump. And I don't know if it's fair to ask you, but what do you think Barbara Jordan's role would be or reaction would be to the moment we're in now of searching for accountability for Donald Trump?
Oh, well, I think she'd be all over it. And, if it had gone to trial, because Nixon had resigned, but she would have been, she was going to be chosen as part of the prosecuting team in the House. Because it goes to trial, you needed people in the House to make the case for impeachment. Chairman Rodino was going to choose her to lead that. So, she would have played a very important role in that impeachment proceeding. And I have no doubt that if she were here today, she would be right with Jamie Raskin and the rest. But she would be you need the reason and the storm. This is Frederick Douglass. And, even though she talks about its reason, right, that which should guide us, she brought the storm too. She brought both passion and reason, and that is one reason I think she's so persuasive.
I think she was even when she alluded to Frederick Douglass' July 4th speech, she believed that power concedes nothing without a demand. And knowing that, then I pulled one of the quotes that she had, and it said, "This imperative is clear. We must make a government that works for all Americans, not just a privileged few." I think that applies to the Trump situation.
Well, we will give that the last word then. Sonny Messiah Giles is the CEO and publisher of The Defender, Houston's Black community news organization. Mary Ellen Curtin studies the history of Black American and women's politics at American University. Her forthcoming biography of Barbara Jordan is called She Changed the Nation, Barbara Jordan's Life and Legacy in Black Politics. It's to be published on September 10th. Thank you both so much for your time. This show was produced by Regina DeHeer, and so many people helped it come together. Thank you to Rice University. Thanks also to our station partner, Houston Public Media, and to the good folks at Good Hope Missionary Baptist Church. Special thanks to our event partner, AHF. Through its We the People Coalition, you can learn more about We the People marching forward to protect democracy at WTPmarch.org. And thank you for listening. Notes from America is a production of WNYC Studios. Find us where you get your podcasts and follow us on Instagram at Notes with Kai. You can keep engaging with our show there and with lots more from today's special broadcast that we're going to share. I'm Kai Wright. Happy Juneteenth. So thank you all for participating in that. We have to now rush and turn this into a radio show for 5 o'clock. But it has been a pleasure to be here. If you have not subscribed or followed us on Instagram, please do. And another thank you to both of our guests and to Reverend Ronald Bell for their time and their wisdom. Happy Juneteenth, y'all.
Let's give another round of applause for Kai Wright. Thank you. I don't think you can hear me now either, but to thank you all again. Another great round of applause to Pastor D.Z. Cofield. Thank you, Pastor Cofield. And to the Good Hope family here. To all of our fathers, we say Happy Father's Day. And now you can go home safely and turn on your radio to NPR at 5 o'clock, and you can hear the whole thing as if it were live tonight. Thank you for being a part of it. Thank you all. God bless. And we've got T-shirts and lots of swag and gifts and stuff to give to folks who. So please join us out in the foyer. Pastor Cofield.
a quick photo. Can we do it on the same mic though? Do they know? We've got to record some more stuff.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, you got to go. No, well, we got to do it right here. Because we have to use the same mic, so I have to. Folks, if y'all just will pardon me, you're going to hear me continue talking because I have to re-record a couple things. So just ignore me.